Hey, good morning, everybody. It is 9 a.m. Happy to have everybody joining us this morning. We are here for the regular board meeting of the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County. It's November 20th. It's 9 a.m. At this time, Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call?
Yes, Bob Lucy.
Here.
Neema Jordan. Not here. Ron Hartine.
Here.
Oscar Delgado.
Here.
Bird Degger.
Did you say Christopher Dare? Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Thank you, I'm here.
Okay, Bill Thomas.
Here.
Adam Spear.
Here.
And Christina Swallow.
Here.
Thank you, Wendy.
All right.
And Denise, I am here, Neoma.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to see everybody. Hope everybody's being safe out there. With that, Madam Vice Chair, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning? She on her phone.
Sorry, I'm having issues taking my phone off of mute. Absolutely, I'd be happy to. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I do appreciate it. I still don't know how to do that properly with this whole COVID thing, but I think we're all just kind of doing the best we can, so I appreciate it. Mr. Director, Director Thomas, we are on to our special presentations this morning.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman. The first one we have is Mike Hillary with Kemper Kroll, our lobbying firm, and Mike is going to give you an update on their services and also our preparation for the 20 legislative session. So, Mike, if you wouldn't mind.
Great. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and most importantly, thank you for your business. I've enjoyed representing RTC for many years, and it's something our firm is very proud of. It's a great organization. You've got a wonderful staff that is very professional, well-respected around the state, and frankly, it's an organization that's a model of good regional governance. That's sometimes a challenge in Nevada as regional governing groups are put together, and I think RTC Washow's really been a model for a very long time. So we appreciate that. I'll be very quick about our firm and what we do. We obviously represent you year-round as issues happen and emerge all year round, including the interim, and we'll talk about some of those specific interim issues in a couple of minutes. So we have a full-time presence in Carson City. Myself and Shelley Capurro are based here in the Reno office, and two of our shareholder partners in the firm, Jennifer Lazovich and Mark Fiorentino, based in the Vegas office, and we all head to Carson City during the legislative session. That may look a little different this time. We don't know what the session is going to look like. We don't know how many people will be allowed in the building and how often. So we'll see how much of this is done virtually. The summer special sessions, I think anyone who watched can attest, were difficult and pretty trying to have everyone locked out of the building. So hopefully there'll be some model where agencies and organizations can have their representatives in the building. That would certainly help. In addition to that, the four of us that are in Carson City, we have Maddie Gugino in our Las Vegas office who manages our in-house bill tracking system, which your staff has access to. We track every bill that's introduced. We look for a whole variety of subjects that might involve RTC. Some of those are very general, and organizations like the League of Cities and NACO and others would typically be much more involved in than we are. But we obviously look very closely for anything involving transportation issues, things that would change or alter the powers and duties structure of the RTC, obviously highway funding, things like that. So we watch those very carefully. We'll work with your staff to identify when those may create a problem, something that we need to be supportive of or potentially seek some changes to. In working with your excellent staff, we have the Monday standing calls that we're all on along with the federal team, and then regular outreach to Bill, Amy, Michael, and anyone else as need be. In terms of finding the expertise, we need to answer questions and educate legislators about bills. So that's a very, very short summary of what we do. I'll jump into the kind of election recap and what we're looking at for 2021, unless anyone has a question.
Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you. So the outcome of the elections are almost certain, absent several lawsuits, at least at the moment, still floating around in courts. A couple will be heard today. Some will start being heard next week and into December. So far, most of those lawsuits, not only here but around the country, challenging the election outcomes have not been successful, but there are at least a couple that would challenge the underlying election itself, challenging the constitutionality of SB 4. The bill passed in the 32nd special session this summer that made a number of changes to election law with which you are all familiar. All of the results have been canvassed by the respective county commissions around the state. The Supreme Court canvass is next Tuesday, the 24th, and that should essentially be the end of things, again, barring something unforeseen in those lawsuits. There were some changes to the legislative balance. You will remember going into the election, the Assembly Democrats held a supermajority, and in the Senate Democrats were one vote short of a supermajority. And again, as all of you know, given your elected positions, that matters a great deal because it takes a supermajority, 2/3 vote, to pass any tax or fee at the legislature. That becomes even more of an issue when we're facing some of the budget challenges that we are. So as the result of the elections, Republicans picked up seats, 1 in the Senate and picked up 3 in the Assembly. That balance is now 12-9 in the Senate, 26-16 in the Assembly. So the Republicans have achieved a super minority status, or the Democrats have lost their supermajority, depending on how you want to put that. Going into the session, a couple of issues that are going to color everything that happens there and everything we talk about. One is the budget. At this moment, based on the projections we've seen from the Economic Forum, the governor's recommended budget, which is really 2 times the amount spent in the first year of the current biennium, is about $1.3 billion short of being fully funded based on our revenue streams. The governor has, again, as you've probably seen in the news, instructed all agencies to prepare 12% contingency plans, euphemistically a cut list for each of the next 2 years of the biennium that can attempt to balance that budget. I think everyone is hoping and expecting that there may be some degree of federal aid that comes out to states and potentially local governments, but that's unknown at this point. If there is not, that's going to make getting out of the next session really challenging. There'll be a lot of people, and particularly with Democratic majorities, who are not going to want to see those kinds of cuts made to education and healthcare and other things. That brings up an interesting, the other interesting issue that will hang over this session. It is time for the every 10-year redistricting and reapportionment, and that battle is always a part of the legislative process and involves a lot of trading. However, because of the delays in the census process, the Democratic majorities have already announced they plan to hold a special session next summer to deal with redistricting. That creates the issue that you really don't need anybody but enough votes in the majority to pass that bill. There is certainly a possibility, I probably shouldn't even use the word certainly, there's a possibility you could see an attempt to craft some kind of grand bargain that involved some sort of tax increase in return for a redistricting plan that created some more competitive seats for those Democrats, or excuse me, for those Republicans now in the minority. Again, I can't begin to make a prediction about whether that might happen or not, but it's certainly something that could and may suck a lot of the air out of the building. And we'll almost certainly have some bill drafts and hearings that are going to deal with emergency powers and lessons learned from COVID. No one ever imagined emergency powers and an emergency declaration lasting as long as this one has, or be as all-encompassing. So those are at least some of the issues that will generally impact the flow of the session. And a couple of things specific to RTC. We monitored, and your staff was intimately involved as well as us, in this past interim on the Senate Concurrent Resolution 3 interim study on electric vehicle adoption in the Highway Fund, really designed to figure out what we do long-term as more electric vehicles are on the roads, and how do they pay something commensurate that an internal combustion engine owner pays in terms of gas taxes to support road maintenance and construction. There was originally intended to be a recommendation out of that committee. The recommendation to the legislature will be to continue to study that for another biennium and bring recommendations back in 2023. that working group that was put together, was not the traditional interim study model, involved people from all of the government entities involved in transportation, environmental groups, construction, lots of transportation advocates of all sorts involved in that process. So they will continue to be involved over this next interim. But one of the things that came out of that, when the recommendation was moved forward from the Interim Committee on Energy, who was responsible for the SCR3 study, was to advance a proposal to the legislature to potentially amend the Constitution to loosen the restrictions on the use of fuel taxes going into the highway fund. Now, those are, as you all know, are restricted to road maintenance and construction. The proposal would be to allow those funds to be used for transit infrastructure. That has not been defined, and we've not seen anything close to final language on that. Obviously, as we do, we will bring that back to you for some guidance on how this body feels and direction for us on how we're to pursue and be involved in that particular issue. So that will be a big one that is going to hang over the session, and a lot of people are interested. A lot of people are already staking out territory on that, not surprisingly, when you talk about that amount of money and the uses that it's gone to historically. And one issue that we know has come forward from RTC South, and it's been advanced by the Southern Nevada Forum, which is a group of local governments, business folks, and legislators in Southern Nevada talking about regional issues, is to have a bill move that would allow RTC South to have the same micro-transit powers that you do, courtesy of what we did last session. So we know that one is coming. And we'll keep an eye on others. We know at least one bill regarding transportation safety study commission, so we'll watch that to make sure that there's opportunities for the RTC's voices to be heard. And we'll contribute back to you as we find other issues as they are introduced. And I will stop there. I've taken up enough of your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hillary. We do appreciate that update in regards to the legislature. It's going to be an interesting year, and we'll see how those things shake out. So, any questions for Mr. Hillary at this time?
Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Mr. Hillary, you mentioned redistricting. Is that only for the legislature and the Senate or state offices, or would that also include local offices in county commission and potentially wards for the two municipalities?
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. That would be limited to state offices and the federal congressional districts.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All right. Seeing no further questions from the board, we will thank Mr. Hillary for joining us this morning, and we will move on to the I-80 corridor study update. And we have Ms. Sandra Rosenberg with us.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see my slides and hear me okay?
We got your slides, Sandra. We can see you. Where everything's good. Morning.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Sandra Rosenberg, Assistant Director for Planning at the Nevada Department of Transportation. I'm here to present some updates on some studies we've completed over the past year or so. I know the RTC has participated in this, but Ms. Cummings thought it would be a good idea to bring it back to the Commission, just so you're aware of some of the resources that are available as some of these policy issues and project prioritization conversations come up. Uh-oh. There we go. So earlier this year, NDOT completed an I-80 corridor study. And the primary purpose of this study was to collectively evaluate previous and ongoing study recommendations from different sources and provide a prioritization plan for NDOT that was used to identify long-term and some short-term projects that would help improve reliability and safety along the I-80 corridor between Reno-Sparks and the Tri-Center. The recommendations from the study identify best return on investments, essentially for that corridor, but taking a regional approach to it. It did not evaluate priorities at a statewide level, although you will see that they kind of did line up. And all projects will eventually have to compete at the statewide level as well. And it was really from a regional and state perspective and focused on that I-80 corridor. So that doesn't mean if one of these recommendations or corridors or improvements didn't rank highly on this, that it may still be a regional priority, just not for the purpose of improving reliability and safety along that corridor. So just as some of the things that went into this study, we looked at a number of over 30 different studies and plans that may have recommendations or concepts that would improve reliability and safety along this corridor, including, as you'll see here, some of the ones you're very familiar with that may, from an initial concept, not make sense in terms of how it improves I-80, but really that regional flow of people and goods to the Tri-Center is important to take a look at. And it does include some of those concepts of new corridors from Reno-Sparks to the Tri-Center. So this is just a subset of some of the new corridors that were evaluated or major projects that were proposed, as well as taking a look at RTC's current RTP and the projects listed there. Just as a note, some of those new corridors, the study itself took a very, I would say, generous approach on what amount of traffic might be pulled into a new corridor. When we look, I'll show later a slide that looks at distribution of employees that go to the Tri-Center. And so the study itself assumed it could be as much as 25% of traffic on any one of these corridors. But when you really look at the distribution of employees, it's actually probably far less than that. Okay, so how are these evaluated? We took a set of criteria. At the time, we were still developing criteria for the One Nevada plan, but we worked in coordination with this study to have the same goal areas and sets of criteria in this study as we're using for a One Nevada. Some of the details of the criteria have changed, but the concept is the same, that really everything NDOT is looking at, we're looking at our 6 goal areas, which are preserve infrastructure, optimize mobility, improve safety, transform economies, sustainability. And then we also looked at benefit cost ratio or a return on investment. So there may be some projects or concepts that help these other goal areas quite a bit, but if they're so costly, you know, as Mr. Hillery mentioned, we have a budget shortfall, and specifically in transportation, we estimate that we have about a $500 million per year shortfall in our funding availability. So it's really important to make sure that any investment we make is the best investment we can and has the best return on that investment. So, you know, but really safety and mobility is something we were really focused on for this corridor in particular. As you know, that's what we hear about for this corridor. So at the end of the day, this was the ranking. I don't know how well you can see that, but the ranking of the projects that we looked at. I do want to clarify that the Reno Spaghetti Bowl, that was the entire project that by far ranked highest in terms of improving the movement of goods and people from Reno-Sparks to the Tri-Center. You know, clearing up that main bottleneck in the middle of the urbanized area is the priority for this corridor. We know it's a priority for the region. We know it's a priority for the state. So it kind of reaffirmed that our major investments in the region is really, you know, placed correctly right now. The second one was 395 widening, and that may seem a little counterintuitive, but we find that there is a large number of employees that that live in the North Valleys that work out at the Tri-Center. So again, improving the overall flow for the region really helps that corridor overall as well. And then you'll see I-80 East widening. This was a very big picture, high level planning study. So these are major projects that will be phased out. As you know, you've seen some of the phasing for Spaghetti Bowl and 395 widening. We are currently working on scoping I-80 East. There was a preliminary phasing plan in this study, which you can find on our website, but right now our design team is really looking at the scoping of it and potential options for different phasings and different scenarios for that corridor. Pyramid Corridor, which we're working very closely with RTC on that, and then you'll see it goes from there. The new corridor alignments did rank fairly low, and that's because the amount of traffic that would be pulled onto those would have kind of a minimal benefit to I-80. As I said, the study gave it a pretty generous 25%, and even at that, it only helps I-80 by about 10%. And we think it's actually far less than that. Those corridors have may have other needs for the region, but in terms of alleviating concerns on I-80, improving safety, improving reliability on I-80. This analysis didn't show that it had much of a benefit. So to that point, we did some surveys of employees that work in the Tri-Center. And this was the sort of the distribution of commute patterns that we saw. So as you can see, the majority of them are coming from Reno-Sparks on I-80. But those that are coming, and the majority of them are really from kind of the inner urban core areas, about 67%. Those that are out, Spanish Springs and beyond, it's really only about 1.4%. Now the study didn't capture everyone, but we thought it was a pretty representative of the region. So you'll see that's why some of these alternative corridors may not really alleviate congestion or improve travel time reliability on the corridor, but they may have other benefits in terms of having alternative routes out there. We also see a number of employees from, Fernley, Silver Springs, Carson City, but really the bulk of them are coming from the Reno-Sparks urbanized area. The other interesting point, and this is the reason I called this presentation studies and not study, this comes from our multi-county regional transit study, interregional transit study that we looked at in terms of non-vehicle options to get people to and from the Tri-Center. And as part of that survey, we also found that actually they're doing pretty well, that only 65, now this was before the pandemic, so these numbers may have changed, but 65.7% of people indicated that they drive alone. And the remaining of them either do a carpool, use My Ride to Work, use an RTC van pool. We know there's a tremendous number of those going out there, or take private transit, such as the bus offered by Tesla. So really in terms of corridors, in terms of capturing alternative modes for people, transit rideshare, it's really pretty high in this corridor. So they're doing a good job, but that doesn't mean we're done. So NDOT is working with employees at the Tri-Center itself, RTC, in terms of trying to develop a transportation management association to continue to look for solutions besides driving alone out to that corridor. That effort slowed down a bit this year as everyone was focused on other things, but it's still a priority for our transit team in terms of working through solutions for such a big, employment generator. So we're gonna continue working on that. The other thing that was evaluated in the transit study, again at a very high level, they did do an initial look at fixed guideway, which could be commuter rail, light rail, something like that. But really found that based on comparison of areas where it's successful, it just doesn't meet. It doesn't appear that would be a good solution here for a number of reasons. The biggest one is because the employment is so spread out at the Tri-Center, getting people out there is sort of minor compared to getting them to their actual place of employment. So again, working on that Transportation Management Association first in terms of how to get the employers together to maybe do a circulator route or something like that would need to be a first step before just having a fixed guideway between Reno-Sparks and the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center. In addition, our rail plan has looked at that as well. Our rail plan is under development right now. And they estimated it, even if we could put rail in that corridor, passenger rail in that corridor, it would carry potentially maybe 1,000 people a day, which when we're talking about, 25 to 50,000 employees out there, it's a drop in the bucket and it's potentially cost prohibitive, as well as, figuring out who would operate that rail, the cost of buying the vehicles and all of that, not to mention the distribution within the center as well. So I just wanted to mention that because I know that comes up often. Again, we'll continue to work with you on this, but right now, our priorities still align with, things like improving the spaghetti bowl and those regional needs in the area. And then I mentioned this earlier, but just as a reminder, when we do these studies, we may do prioritization for a particular purpose or corridor. But before we assign resources to it, it also goes through our One Nevada prioritization process. So we have a performance-based, data-driven process for screening needs and prioritizing projects as we develop and assign resources to projects and needs throughout the state. So it's actually beneficial that those projects we found to have the best impact to improve reliability and safety along I-80 are also happen to be statewide and regional priorities, because that helps them to compete for funding, both for the current projects that are going on as well as the next phases of them. And so I know that was kind of a lot summarized very briefly. I'm happy to take any questions, and we're happy to provide additional information through sources on our website or team members to talk with anyone on any of these aspects of what we're looking at here. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mrs. Rosenberg. We do appreciate you coming and giving us a presentation on the studies that have been going on. I'm going to kind of kick this off because I have some questions for you in regards to, you know, when you talk about criteria and how you guys conduct the studies, I have a challenge. I challenge some of those discussions because I know, and I agree with you that I think that the prioritization of the regional projects such as Spaghetti Bowl and those need to maintain a priority. However, as far as the I-80 corridor study saying that the alternate routes, either the proposed TRIC connectors or you know, the South Meadows connector or something like that, you know, we didn't see a whole lot of improved traffic flow off of I-580 with the open of the Southeast connector at first, but we had to change people's routines, right? I think you have to change their habits. And if you don't have something to change their habit with, of course, you're always going to have the same result. I would disagree that the Sparks routes, the alternative proposed tri-center connectors, wouldn't have an impact on I-80 greater than what your study is showing. I think there's a human element that's missing out of that and a habit changing issue, because I've always contended that if you build a road, it'll allow for future development, it'll allow for future planning, it'll put people in a different direction, it'll take load factors off places that even studies can't anticipate. And I think even the best, we've seen this time and time again, even the best studies can't anticipate all of the outcomes. So I appreciate where the data is showing that it's not a functional option, but I would contend to disagree with that, and I would hope that we can still look at those alternative routes, especially the ones coming out of the North Valleys and the Sparks, Spanish Springs area as potential opportunities going forward. So those are my comments. I don't really have any questions. I think you guys have done a phenomenal job really trying to hone in on some of the challenges here. I am a little disappointed that, you know, we still, you know, we have, you know, My Right to Work and van pool going out there that only represents about, you know, roughly, 14% of the traffic on I-80 to the Chaparral Industrial Center, which is disappointing. So we hope that that number would be a little bit higher, but, you know, once again, you can't change habits unless you have them a good option to do something. So those are my comments.
So,
go ahead, Ms. Rosenberg.
I just wanted to clarify that comment. Again, just because some of those alternatives ranked low in this study doesn't mean we won't continue to work with you on them. We had a limited set of data and a specific purpose for this study. What concerned us is this distribution, and so some things we can do with the RTC is further separate where those employees live. But the reality is people aren't going to travel north up Pyramid Highway to go east. So you need to see what that capture is. And certainly any alternative route would have some improvement. We didn't look at anything we didn't think wouldn't improve at some level. The question comes at, from a regional and statewide perspective, where are our limited funds best used? But it doesn't mean we won't continue to look at it, just like we're going to continue to look at continuing to encourage more people to not drive alone out there. So it's an ongoing effort. This was what we found with the data we had available. It wasn't, the roadway isn't designed yet. So, alignment and routing, what type of facility is will have some impact as well. But we all know we have limited resources. And right now, from NDOT's perspective, our priority is really I-80 as a major, as an interstate, as a major freight mover. That's where our priorities are, but we'll continue to partner with you on other options as well.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And so one question I have in regards to the data set in population, is that data set is about current population and current residents, or does that anticipate growth, or did you pull some of that data from Team RPA?
No, this was based on a survey of employees that work at the Tri-Center and where they live.
Okay, but as it pertains to the I-80 corridor study, did that project future growth into the North Valleys?
We used, so we used the RTC travel demand model to project future traffic volumes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. It looks like we've got some work to do here. Obviously, if we're going to try to, bolster and continue to use Mind Right to work in RTC bandful, so we've got it. Looks like we've got to do a better job of making that more viable option for people, and then hopefully we can continue to work with NDOT to address those needs along the I-80 corridor. Because until we get a federal transportation bill to increase that, that is cost prohibitive to widen that section of the East River Canyon. So those are my comments. I'll turn it over to the remainder of the board. Anybody else from the board? Madam Vice Chair, do you have anything?
I do, and thank you. And I see Christopher Dare has a question as well. This is some good data, but my questions were kind of in line with what Chair Lucy's were, and how the data married up with the heat map of future development. I think we can all agree that there are some fairly substantial developments coming in the North Valleys, as well as the southeast communities of Reno, as well as western Reno as well, and how that kind of married up with the data of who's kind of working and traveling where. I think the information that it's, the largest travelers are coming from the core of both the cities of Reno and Sparks. I guess my question is, two is, I think this data is good as we look at RTC and the 395 Pyramid Connector. I think we can build off of some information that you have received here to just kind of see where people are traveling to and from and how many, and then build projections from that. But also, just trying to understand the funding mechanisms. I know whenever there are, and I'll use the Spaghetti Bowl as an example, that was a regional project which will have regional benefits, and RTC, contributed fairly significant financial support for that. I guess my question is, on these sorts of projects, what is the expectation from Washoe County's RTC, and how does that marry up with Story County's contributions? Because this clearly is a benefit to them.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And actually, Director Swallow was just presenting at Story County earlier this week, and they were asking about that corridor as well. But the reality is we don't have enough money to do everything. So we continue to work on prioritization and figure out where we get our best bang for our buck. So I think it's important to continue to gather data and continue to analyze it and look at who's benefiting from it. From a statewide priority, it's going to be tough for NDOT to be the lead on an alternative corridor when we have such needs on our interstate facility. But that all needs to be worked out, because we need to figure out what's the need for an alternative corridor, who does it benefit, what type of facility is it? Is it a connector, an arterial type connector, or a limited access type facility, and who should be responsible for that? And in particular, the maintenance of it. That's our concern anytime we're adding any type of new construction, is we already have a shortfall in maintaining the facilities we have. So that needs to be considered with any type of new facility. So it's very early in the process. We wanted to bring to you what we've found so far, the data we have, the analysis we've done, but it was, again, for a very specific purpose. And we just need to continue to partner on that. I think really digging into the data on not just where the developments are, but where likely employees will live, because development doesn't necessarily mean that's where the employees will live. So working with regional planning and the RTC in terms of patterns, both growth patterns and commute patterns, and continue to evaluate the regional needs and the regional connections. And we'll have to work together on that. I know that's not quite answering your question, but I just don't think we know yet who would fund something that we don't know what it is yet.
No, and I appreciate that. And just to kind of wrap up quickly, I mean, I have been vocal on my frustrations with the lack of financial participation, or frankly, any participation from Story County. I've been on RTC for 8 years. I have never seen them step up and step forward, and maybe I'm missing something, and there's conversations going on that I've not been involved in, to really partner with us on something that is clearly significantly beneficial to them. Now, saying that, I understand that our residents are impacted by the bottlenecks and the insufficient road structures to get them out to that employment center. But, you know, unless and until they step up, at least in a fashion on par with what Washoe County may contribute, I have real heartburn when we have issues. The McCarran Loop is one that comes to mind right off, that is within our own county that needs improvement. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox now.
Madam Vice Chair, Commissioner Hartson, I'll go to you next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I mean, Neoma, you're spot on. I was going to ask exactly the same questions about Story counties or the Tri-Center themselves being participants in this. Not necessarily Story County. You know, let the Tri-Center, of whom has benefited from this greatly, as we can see, 80.3% of the traffic is coming from Washoe County. What are the chances that we could put some type of an HOV lane in to kind of encourage that nearly 66% of drivers that are alone to put another person in their car with them?
That's a great question, and something we're very interested in. As we look at limited resources and trying to maintain what we have and reduce, future demand, as well as our new greenhouse gas thresholds, we're certainly interested in continuing to encourage people to make different choices. So as part of that scoping effort for that corridor, that's something we're going to look at. That will certainly be an alternative, is if we add lanes, should they be HOV lanes? And we've done some preliminary look at that. I don't think we're ready to make a solid recommendation yet, but that's something I think at NDOT we would like to look at in general. Anytime we're adding additional lanes anywhere, does an HOV lane make sense, and who gets to use it, and how does that work and everything. So thank you for that. I think that's an excellent recommendation.
Well, and typically, because of the makeup of the freeway here in town, there's only a couple of places that I can think of that an HOV lane might be beneficial, but heading out east, it's absolutely beneficial, and then heading west again. Those kinds of lanes can push, traffic through fairly quickly, as long as you've got multiple passengers. So I'm interested to continue that conversation. I believe it was a previous slide, Sandra, that showed the rankings 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the number 4 was, yes, thank you so much, the Pyramid Connector. What is is that still the disk drive alignment to get over to 395? Is that what that's being called?
That included the entire, and I apologize, I pulled this from the study, but the entire 395 Pyramid Connector EIS. So that includes that connection as well as a number of improvements on Pyramid.
Okay. Yeah, and look, with all due respect to you guys and the previous director from RTC, I don't see that pyramid connector getting to 395 is of great benefit at this time, as much as just getting some improvements on the Pyramid Highway generally. I'm not an engineer, but I did stay in a Holiday Inn Express last night, and I did drive there. So I just don't see that. I don't see that's going to be a huge benefit. Now that said, I will put a caveat in that once the Wild Creek High School gets put in, I would suggest to all of us that that's going to dramatically change the traffic patterns on McCarran and the ability for McCarran to carry traffic efficiently during peak hours. I'll be honest, I'm frightened by this. I've said it since day one, before we made any approvals, before any transferences occurred. I'm still afraid of it. So that may ultimately be the sad, very expensive workaround that we're going to have to engage in because of the changes that will be required on that McCarran corridor. So, but I continue to praise you guys for looking at Pyramid Highway. Please, Sandra, look out north here, beyond Egyptian, all the way to the end of the valley, that 2-lane stretch. It's extremely dangerous and really does need attention sooner rather than later. I don't want accidents to drive our planning process. I would rather be forward thinking and be more proactive as opposed to being reactive, as you have heard me say numerous times. So I appreciate you guys' attention to that, and I'll let Mr. Dare step up. Thank you, and thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank
Is it
you.
my turn?
It is your turn, Mr. Commissioner Dare.
Thank you for being here. Is it Rosenberg? Is how you say that?
Yes.
Very nice to meet you. And a couple of things I want to share, and it has to do with the corridor. A few things to think about, and it might be wise to even do a layover on this that would give us a perspective as well. I don't know if you considered the air quality problems that come because of the 80. I serve on the health board, and that's one of the areas that I'm on quite a bit. It's an area I focus on. And we're very close to non-attainment. And what that means is really bad things for our community here when it comes to the cost of other industrial area growth and things we can do for our community. And so part of it, yes, I see some of the studies, and thank you for putting them together, but that would be probably a wise layover to look at what we're causing, and the unintended consequences of growth create a lot of different things. That'd be one of the things I would share. The other thing, and I agree with pretty much what everyone has said here, but one of them has to do with when you say that people aren't from that area. Well, part of it is people tend to move towards areas where they can get to their job. So I think it would be wise to have being perceptive that if there was a corridor, you would find that people who live, they would start moving in that direction. And in my ward alone, there's 20,000 new people going to be moving in the next 5 to 6 years. That's not a guess. That actually has to do with how many apartments, homes, and things are being built in my ward alone, not including what's in Von Hartung's area, or anything like that. If you would do a layover of that, and I have no idea how you would suggest choosing whether they're going to get a job out there or not. That's kind of a strange thing. There's no magic ball for that. However, you could take a percentage and say, a percentage of these people are going to do that. So you would know a percentage of these people are going to use that. And so as you unroll that, I think that would be also a wise study should do. The other thing that's real important, we do a lot of work on federal, and I know you guys do as well. One of the things we know, especially with some of the potential changes and all that's going on in our government, there probably is going to be some infrastructure finances coming out. Shovel-ready things get finances. We know that, and they move quickly. So I get to serve on a lot of national boards of things we do, and I can tell you one of the things we hear over and over, be shovel-ready, because when this thing goes, they'll put money out, and it will go to all the people ready. So I appreciate some of the different things, but this would be one I think it'd be great to at least get it to where we're moving a little bit farther than just the theory of it and really look at it a little bit more. And then I have one final question, and I don't use this to demean anybody or anything, but I have asked in the past for some comparisons on what we spend in the South compared to the North, and I've not received that yet. And maybe a population-based thing. There's a perception, you know the perception, and I would like to believe it's not true, but I know we say we have limited money, but I don't know if we have limited money because we're spending it South. And I'm not saying it's true, but no one's confirmed I'm wrong yet. And so I'd like to make sure we're looking at that.
Councilman Dare, this is Christina Swallow, Director of NDOT for the record. I just wanted to let you know we're actually reporting back on that later in my report today.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I was going to mention that. Thank you, Director Swallow. Just on a couple of your other comments, the RTC is starting to update their regional transportation plan. So those issues of air quality and population growth and distribution are all looked at as part of that regional planning process. We work very closely with the RTC on that, as all of you do. And that's where really the basis of all of this information comes from. So as they develop that RTP, we can certainly relook at some of these assumptions and rerun some numbers. But that's really, a regional issue. And I'm glad you mentioned air quality, because not only air quality, but as I mentioned, we now have greenhouse gas thresholds we're trying to meet. So that balance of where people live and where they work and how they're commuting is critically important. And when we approve housing outside of the urban core, that could potentially have a benefit if that's where they're going and there's a shortcut to get there. But if it's just growth in the outskirts, that could have a negative impact as well. So that's something we all need to work together on in the region in terms of those planning decisions and those impacts on regional air quality, regional travel time reliability, the ability of people to get to work. It's a complex issue that we all have to work together on, but it is being looked at as part of that effort.
Thank you. Are you actually going into our cities and pulling out some of the potential permits pulled and things so you can have an idea? Because like I said, when you say that, it still sounds like you kind of doubt whether we will grow the 20,000 people, but that's just my word alone. And I don't have doubts. We are seeing all this move forward and infrastructure is moving forward like it, but we would like to make sure the infrastructure moves forward also in these corridor type situations.
So there's a process, and maybe Amy or Dan can help me out on this one, but there's an established process for what assumptions are made for those growth patterns for the RTP. And it's a regional consensus forecast. So all the entities agree on the growth in the region, and that's part of the RTP process. So I would, and maybe they're going to talk about that later today, but certainly maybe RTC planning can get with you in terms of explaining that process and if it needs improvement. But that's really the RTC and the entities working through those projections, and we use the RTC's projections.
Thank you.
And I did message with Commissioner Delgado, and he said he had some more comments or questions. So, Mr. Rosenberg, we do appreciate you coming. We know how difficult your job is. It's very challenging to try to build a statewide infrastructure with very little money. We understand, trust me, I think we sit in the same boat here in Washington County when we try to use regional funds to build regional roads. But we've got to continue to work together, and until we do the federal government to find those deep pockets and review the BUILD Act or do some sort of continuing resolution for an infrastructure bill, we're going to have to sit and figure out what we're doing. So with that, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it, and we will move on. We'll beat up on. We'll have a second opportunity, and Christina's with us this morning. Remember, everybody. I know it's everybody's favorite thing to beat up on NDOT, but we don't get to do it twice today. All right, with that, thank you for the special presentation this morning. We are on to item 1, which is the approval of the agenda. Are there any items on the agenda as drafted and submitted to the board that need to be changed? I do know that the executive director needs to make a change to one item, so I will turn it over to him.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. It's not really a change, it's just there's some additional information that has been presented to the board, which should be part of the record. That just clarifies the staff report for agenda item 3.18, which is the granite construction settlement. So we presented that to you. Its substance and the content doesn't change. It just clarifies in the report a little more accurately the details.
Okay. So with that statement, are there any items from any commissioner that would like to be pulled or further described in the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda, Mr. Chair. Hartung.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Jordan.
All right, I have a motion from Commissioner Hartung, second from Vice Chair Jordan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all commissioners voting. All right, we're on to item 2, public input. We did receive public input between 4 p.m. yesterday. The input, the public comment was submitted by Andrew Samuelson. His message is in regards to the Center Street Cycle Track schedule. His message is, hi, please move the Center Street Cycle Track schedule up to summer 2022. This is a critical piece of infrastructure to make cycling safe in the downtown arena. This is a small project. It should easily be able to be designed in the 1.5 to 2 years between now and summer of 2022. So those are his comments, and those comments will be put on the record. We appreciate Mr. Samuelson for coming in and adding those to the record. I have no other further comment at this time, and I don't see anybody on Zoom wishing to speak. So we will close public comment and bring it back to the board. We are now on to our consent agenda. In the consent agenda this morning, we have a number of IT items that are from items 3.1 through 3.27. Are there any items in the consent agenda that would like to be pulled out and have a specific discussion or have a different or different, more of a detail added to it?
Mr. Chairman, not Hartung, not an item to be pulled, but something for future consideration.
Okay, Commissioner Hartung, go ahead.
That's item 3.5, acknowledge the receipt of information regarding an automatic increase of 2.38% to the regional road impact fees as allowed by NRS 278B.225 and required by ordinances adopted by Washoe County, the City of Reno, and City of Sparks. I have no issue with this, but what I would like to ask is to bring the RIF program back to us. I know that everyone complains that fees and et cetera make housing less affordable, but I think that there are some things. As an example, we have never required RIF fees to be administrated completely through RTC, i.e. the trading of those RIF credits. We've created a fiat currency with them, and yet they're still allowed to be traded on the open market at any price, which I completely disagree with, and I'd like to have a discussion to see how the rest of the board feels about that. I think we could stabilize the price of RIF credits. Extremely important, and so I'd like to bring that back.
So that we don't jump outside of the open meeting.
No. I'm just telling you what I'd like to see come back on this item, not just a straight increase. I'd like to see it come back, and the reason I'd like to see it come back, I'm expecting no answers. I don't want anyone to deliberate on this. These are my feelings, and I'm happy to support this right now, but I think it should come back to us.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. All right. Any other further comments from any of the commissioners in regards to these consent?
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion on the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Dare. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously on the consent agenda. Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it, and we'll move forward with that. Commissioner Hartung, your comments have been noted by the executive director, and we will get that on the future agenda for a larger discussion.
Yeah, and perhaps next year sometime, early next year, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Director. That's fine with me. But I think we just do need to have that conversation. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We are on to item 4. This is our public hearings. The public hearing is set to be no earlier than 9:05. It is now 10 o'clock, so we're good. So with that, Mr. Director.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. This item is going to be presented by Deputy Director Cummings, so maybe if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Amy Cummings with RTC. This is an amendment to the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, which is our 5-year plan. The primary purpose is to incorporate some updates to our Lemon Drive project and the interchange there. And I'm going to ask Dan Dunges, our planning manager, to provide some additional detail.
Thank you, Amy. Dan Dunges, planning manager. For the record, thank you, commissioners. And I don't have a formal presentation today, but I just kind of want to touch on some of the highlights. We are seeking approval of amendment number 3 to our federal fiscal year 2020-2024 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, or RTIP. This was preceded by a 21-day public comment period that was held per RTC's public participation plan. That comment period did close yesterday and no comments were received. Kind of the impetus for this proposed amendment is anytime there's a new project proposed, it does trigger a formal amendment process, which is the case for, we're looking at Lemon Drive widening project in particular. We're looking to split this project that kind of had 2 different segments, but it was still one project. We're wanting to split those projects, split them into 2 different projects. So the first segment is from US 395 to Military Road. And with that kind of separation, it's now going to include construction of a diverging diamond interchange, or DDI. And NDOT will be contributing some funding for that, which will kind of really accelerate some of the improvements on US 395. The second segment is from Fleetwood Drive to Chickadee Drive, and this is being programmed for preliminary engineering. Concurrently, as I mentioned, NDOT's adding funding to a couple of widening and improvement projects on US 395. One segment's from McCarran to Golden Valley, and the other segment is from Golden Valley to Stead Boulevard. As anytime we do a formal amendment, we want to try to be efficient and take advantage of the opportunity to make any other changes. So I'm just going to briefly touch on just a couple of other changes that are coming as a part of this amendment. One of those is we're looking at allocating some FTA funding that we have currently a program for the RTC building renovation program. And this is kind of just an ongoing budget item in our RTIP. We want to transfer some of that funding to the future development of a bus rapid transit station, or BRT, on Virginia Street. This would be northbound Virginia Street across from the Peppermill Station, which is also potential for a future joint development project with FTA. We are also going to be just utilizing some different funding sources for the Pyramid Highway Phase 1 project, as well as the Sky Vista widening project, but there's no scope change to either of those projects. And lastly, as I mentioned, there's no comments received. However, there was a request to extend funding of the Safe Routes to School program to accommodate a pending agreement. This request did come after the agenda went out, so you won't see that on the project listing in your packets, but I did want to note it here for the record. None of these changes require what's called a transportation conformity or air quality analysis, as all of the projects, the capacity projects, were previously modeled in our existing regional transportation plan. So with that, I'm happy to entertain any questions, and just looking for approval of the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dunges, and thank you, Ms. Cummings. We do appreciate the presentation this morning. Being this is a public hearing, I will look to see if there's any public input. Was there any public input? There was no public input submitted for item 4.1 for this public hearing. We do not have anybody via Zoom that is looking to comment. We'll close the public comment period. Bring it back to the board. Are there any board members that have any questions or concerns in regards to the RTIP amendment? Commissioner Hartung, I see you signed up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I thought, Dan, we always had two phases. I thought the first phase was to Military Road, and then the second phase was from Fleetwood on.
That is correct. However, that was all under one project. And I see Brian Stewart has popped down here. He probably give a further explanation, but once the project development got along, it made sense to staff to kind of break those out into two separate projects. So Brian, I'll turn it over to you for any additional comment.
Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Chairman. If I may address Commissioner Hartung's question with respect to the Lemon Drive project. We had one large project in two distinct segments that we broke out as we initially started this through our planning process and getting that going. It was basically from the freeway to Military, segment 1, and then segment 2 being Fleetwood out to the Chickadee area. So now all we've done is been able to really accelerate the segment 1 section, and with the partnership of NDOT, we've been able to include the intersection or the interchange improvements, so the diverging diamond interchange. So we wanted just to have that complete project. We will continue on with segment 2 as a separate project that works with the county and the city with respect to the Swan Lake Recovery Plan and the capacity improvements that are required out there to the east.
Okay, and I'm going to put it on the record again. Getting us to Chickadee is of no value. It's a little like in Spanish Springs, widening Pyramid Highway to Golden View. We need to get that all the way to Ramsey. We've got to get it to the end of the valley. And I know Director Gibson told me it was not a problem, but I still don't hear anybody talking about it. I see constantly that we're only talking about going to Chickadee, and I know that the potential preferred alignment, which everyone's referring to as the berm alignment, which kind of takes the whole thing sort of west. That really has no value using that alignment only going to Chickadee. It really does need to go all the way to the end of the valley and go up to Ramsey. It really will benefit the valley tremendously to take it all the way through. So I don't know what we need to do, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Stewart, Mr. Donges. I don't know what we need to do to get those changes done. But we really do need to evaluate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Hartung. Any further discussion on this item in regards to the Vice Chair Jordan? Do you have any comments?
I do not.
Commissioner Dare?
I'm good, thank you.
And Commissioner Delgado?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. I do have one question. I think Ms. Cummings, you would probably be the best to answer this. As you look at the attachment C within the RTIP amendment, it does separate the two packages for Lemon Drive widening. Obviously, Lemon Drive widening package 1, which is in the NEPA process. It's identified that it is in the local fund as $3 million of project engineering. But when you go to Lemon Drive widening segment 2, that falls under local fuel tax, RTCWA, for $1 million for the project engineering. Why two separate funds for the same technically the same project, but two different packages? Is that why we're separating it out in the RTIP?
Thank you for that question, Amy Cummings, RTC. And we have the funding in for NEPA because there could be some federal actions required with the interchange. at 395. We're currently working with NDOT to define the right-of-way limits and issues of that sort. So it's possible that we will not require NEPA to be conducted, but we want to be prepared in case that is necessary. So our preference would be to use local funds for both of these projects to expedite project delivery.
Okay, thank you. But we're using local funds for it shows identified local funds for the widening of Lemon Drive to Military, but it just shows local fuel tax for the second expansion that Commissioner Hartung's discussion. Why the local fuel tax and not the local funds on the second portion?
Well, the local fuel tax is in our current long-range or 10-year financial plan. So we have set that aside for that project. And you may have noticed in this amendment, we're also adding some state fuel tax to the interchange as well.
Yeah, I do see the state fuel tax. I guess which brings me to a future discussion in today's meeting, which Director Swallow brings us to some concern. Obviously, as we were given the discussion this morning from Mr. Hillary in Kemper Coal, BDR 48, which identifies moving some of the fuel tax from road construction to transit construction infrastructure, which we haven't defined yet, brings some concern that those funds and those available funds might be diminished both at the state and at the local levels. And so, which would put certain projects in jeopardy. So I would hope that going forward, we identify maybe more secured funds for future projects like this, but also that we defend our fuel tax for that infrastructure cost vehemently during the legislative session. So those are my comments in regards to this amendment, but seeing nothing different. My questions were answered. So with that being said, we've called for public comment. There is no more discussion on this from the board. I am looking for a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved, Jordan.
I have a motion from Vice Chair.
Second, Delgado.
Second from Commissioner Delgado. I have a motion in the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously to approve the amendment. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We're on to item 4.2. Director Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. This item again will be presented by Deputy Director Cummings.
Thank you, Amy Cummings with RTC. I hope you can see this graphic to get everyone oriented to the area we're talking about. This item is also a public hearing, and the approval of a resolution for the sale and purchase agreement for the remnant parcel on this section of North Virginia Street. So we're talking about the east side of Virginia Street between 8th and 9th Street. I know this graphic will look familiar to everyone. This was to show you where we're talking about and to have a brief reminder on why we acquired this property about a year ago. And the purpose was to complete our Virginia Street Rapid Extension project. These parcels were needed so that we could improve the intersection, add the center median, bicycle lanes, ADA compliant sidewalks, and of course, our northbound and southbound rapid stations at this block. So RTC has acquired the section in yellow shown on this graphic. And here is the real-time traffic cam from a few days ago. So you can see now the intersection is substantially complete. The landscaping is there in the center median. The stations are there, as you can see, some fully ADA compliant sidewalks. And on the left side of this image, there is a fenced off gravel lot. And that is the remnant parcel that we're talking about. And this is just as a refresher, not the first time. I know you have all seen this, but for the record, this item was discussed at the January 2020 transit workshop. And we've had items in front of you on this subject in March as well as October board meetings this year. So we're continuing the direction that has already been provided. As we have spoken about before, having an active university use, having our rapid station essentially be the front door to the university campus will have tremendous benefits for our system by boosting our ridership. So we feel it is absolutely in the interest of RTC to have a university use directly adjacent to our transit stop. As far as I am aware, we have not received any public comments. Ms. Thompson, have you received anything for the record today?
No.
All right.
Concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. We do appreciate it. Yes, as you pointed out, this board has dealt with this issue a number of times and are happy to kind of be wrapping this up, so to speak. Being that there is no public comment as time, are there any discussions from any of the commissioners in regards to this remnant parcel and its our transaction with it? Madam Vice Chair? No. County Commissioner Hare? Commissioner Dare, do you have anything?
I'm here, yes. I just want to say, I think that is a great idea. I think that university being there seems very wise. I know I'm a little newer to the conversation on some of that, and I got to hear about it before. And I think that brings something good to our region and is wise, even business-wise, for what we do as RTC. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further comments from any of the commissioners, I will bring it back and look for look for a motion to adopt the resolution.
So moved, Hartung.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Hartung, second from Vice Chair Carden. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. We are on to item 5.1. Director Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. This is the Amy show today. My announcement on this item is to hand it again off to Deputy Director Cummings to do the presentation on the RTIP. Or I'm sorry, RTP.
Thank you, Amy Cummings, RTC. This is an informational item for discussion today. We do anticipate bringing additional information for you to think about and provide input on over the next couple of meetings and have a draft plan for you in January. And I wanted to follow up on the comments from earlier this morning and the information presented by Sandra Rosenberg on the NDOT studies were based on the 2040 consensus forecasts. So what we have recently received from the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency is the 2050 regional consensus forecast. So those are going to incorporate the most recently approved developments that have been identified. So we appreciate the efforts of TMRPA to provide that data for us. And I know they have worked closely with each of the jurisdictions. So that will give us another 10-year look ahead into our demographics and travel demand needs. And we will have those results, for you at the next meeting. So we'll be able to take a fresh look at what those volumes are anticipated to be. For this presentation, we wanted to take some time and focus on our vision for transit, which is, of course, one of our core services and so important to our local economy and our regional economy. We are required to have a fiscally constrained regional transportation plan, but we also have the ability to identify an unfunded vision and our unfunded needs. So we can have a visionary aspect to this plan, but we also have to identify what we project is reasonably foreseeable for us to be able to build and operate over the life of the RTP. So we wanted to start by focusing on what are our priorities, what do we want to accomplish with transit, and at the core, it's to provide a productive, cost-effective, high-quality transit system that offers our customers a great customer experience. As we've all seen during the pandemic, transit is carrying our heroes, our essential workers to their jobs in our medical facilities, warehouse and distribution, and our grocery stores, and the list goes on. So we know that about half our trips, or more than that, are these essential trips. So we want to continue to focus on that, as well as over time, bring back the customers who have not been traveling during COVID-19, as well as attract new riders over the long term. We need to be innovative and flexible with how we operate. We have our a range of options that you're all well aware of, our van pool that we talked about this morning, and FlexRide, and our senior ride, and our partnerships with not-for-profits to meet many of these unique travel demands in our community. And of course, we're going to continue with our outreach and marketing to bring back our customers who've not been with us during COVID-19, as well as attract new customers over the long term. Ride, our fixed route service, is the core of what we do. This is the bulk of our service hours and our ridership. And as right now, what we're providing is really the maximum of what our existing revenues will allow for. But as additional revenues do become available over the life of the RTP, we want to focus on increasing the frequency and the hours of operation for those routes that we think are going to give us the most riders. In many cases, those are our core central routes. And we are going to be taking a closer look at this in an update of our short-range transit plan that we're going to be embarking on next year. And we are very excited with the success of our FlexRide service that we feel is really the most effective tool and the best type of service for some of our lower density suburban areas. And we're seeing that in Sparks and Spanish Springs and North Valleys right now through our pilot program. So we're going to continue to evaluate that. And again, as funding becomes available, see if there are areas where it would make sense to expand that type of service. And we do want to have that forward-thinking visionary element to our plan. And a big part of that is going to build on our rapid transit service. We have seen, pre-COVID, 30% increase in ridership on our Lincoln line. Once that had started, we are looking forward to great success for the extension of the Virginia line. But we see huge opportunity to work with our local partners in terms of shaping the land use patterns around these corridors and the future growth of our community. And we have two expansions that we would like to continue forward in this RTP. They're in our current plan. And one is the extension of the Lincoln line on West 4th, as well as the extension of the Virginia line down to the Summit Mall, Mount Rose Highway, and Geiger Grade area. So we feel that over the long term, and again, this is not something we have the funding identified for today, but over the next 20 to 30 year horizon of this plan, we feel this is the future of our rapid system. We also want to make sure we're paying attention to our capital facility needs. So in terms of our maintenance facility, you're all familiar with the Spaghetti Bowl. And in 2037 to 2040, that's when phase 5 of Spaghetti Bowl is anticipated to occur. And that does include the relocation of the Villanova maintenance facility. So we want to start thinking about that now so that we're prepared. We see needs to expand our Sutro maintenance facility so that we can build on our zero emission fueling capabilities. In terms of capital projects that we project being able to implement in the next few years, one is an expansion of 4th Street Station. So there is a map in the top right corner that shows our existing 4th Street Station and a small parcel, about half a block, immediately south of 4th Street Station that is currently owned by City of Reno. And we understand there is a willingness there for RTC to obtain that parcel and construct 4 new bus bays. This would give us added flexibility in how we charge our buses. We could add additional electric charging infrastructure on these bays. Right now, we just have 2 at 4th Street Station, and yet a third of our buses are electric. So having more flexibility in how we can charge them during the day would be a tremendous advantage for us. And it would give us an option to add a little bit more parking on site, which would be valuable as well. And as was mentioned in the RTIP amendment, we are also working on upgrading our Peppermill station. Obviously, this is a pre-COVID picture from 2019, but it does show you the reality of this being one of our most heavily used BRT stations. It's right across the street from Peppermill. And we want to convert this small mini station into a fully ADA compliant with all of the expected BRT amenities at that site. And you may recall our affordable housing study identified this location behind this station footprint as a possible site for affordable housing joint development through the FTA process. So we would like to continue to pursue that as well. And of course, I know this is a priority for the RTC and has been for many years to upgrade the ADA accessibility of our transit stations on our fixed route system. So this is an example of one of our early projects. This has been underway for a little more than a year. We've prioritized some of the stations that have the highest ridership and the greatest ADA deficiencies, and have done the first slate of those. And this is one that you'll see on Mill Street and gives you an example. We have 100 all over the region that we have identified to work on. In our ADA transition plan, I identified the next 300 after that for us to work on. So it'll take us a number of years to work through all of these improvements, but we want to make sure there's a line item in the RTP to address that. And finally, this is back to unfunded needs, but for passenger facilities. We have identified through our outreach the needs for what we're calling mobility hubs. And what we mean by that is something that could include parking, linking that with multimodal access like bicycle parking, van pool parking, and access for ride, rapid, and or employer shuttles. And we've heard the needs for that expressed for downtown Reno as well as downtown Sparks. We also want to continue looking at potentially relocating our Meadowood Mall transfer station. This does not have the urgency that it once did. We had a request about a year ago from Meadowood Mall to relocate this to another portion of the property. I think that the urgency is not quite there from the Meadowood perspective. So we may have a little bit more time to be strategic and think of how that could best suit our operations. That concludes presentation on where we are looking for the transit vision for the Regional Transportation Plan, and welcome your comments.
Thank you, Ms. Cummings. Really appreciate it. So are there any comments from the board? Commissioner Dare.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you, Amy. It's always exciting to look in the future, and I just want to see it all done. That'd be great. And us have all the money in the world. One of the big things that you hit on, and I just want to talk for a minute on the phase 2 and phase 3. In that, I know we went after the bus stops that are seeing most ridership and things like that, but we have some that potentially the ridership's not there because they're sitting in unusable spots. Like in the sense of it floods, when it floods, they're full of water, things like that. Do we know if any of the phase 2 and phase 3 ones out of, and not just Sparks, but I'd say anywhere in the region because it's affected everybody, are any of those in the phase 2 and 3 just because they're a little harder to get to in the sense of right away? Because my only concern, and I appreciate our need to expand others, but when we know we have some that are sitting without ADA and some of the issues that we have in our region, to go and expand one and put more money into one when we have so many not doing well. So can you just speak to that for a minute? I appreciate the need in our most popular place, but I also don't want to feel like we're putting these aside. Thank you.
It's a great point, and we can certainly share with you the first 100 locations as well as the future 300 that have been identified. And I see Brian is on screen and may have some additional information to share.
Good morning, Brian Stewart, Director of Engineering. Again, good to see everybody. And to answer the question, Commissioner Dare, we are, we stumbled a little bit with respect to right-of-way and being able to get to all these projects that we thought we could as quickly. But these things are starting to stack up on each other. So we're proposing a construction bid for this spring to go out. There'll be about 35 stops Of that, there is a significant amount on Gregg Street, which I believe is where we're seeing a lot of the ones that are in the puddles and stuff that are in Sparks. And then at the end of the summer, we'll be putting out another slew of these. And then starting in the next winter, we'll be putting out another slew. So it's continuing to really to build. So you'll see a lot of momentum coming up here in the next year with respect to the stops, individual stops that are in the whole region.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I'd like some updates as we go. That would be one of the things that I think I think we had this conversation a year ago, if I remember, and I thought we'd be farther along. And I think you said there's been some things. Obviously, we're going through many things. So I understand. I'm not even trying to make a judgment on that. But as we move forward, in some ways, our bus stops potentially will become more and more important as some of our community may have less ability to get their own car and things are the things that we're going to walk through with COVID. And so I'm concerned just to making sure we get everything as much as we can, especially in the ones that are more dire and have some of those issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Amy, a couple of different questions. I've asked over the years to, let's look at all the routes and see which ones are lower performing. And maybe even look at them in terms of time of day and flex some of those routes, because you mentioned, the senior ride. I know the Sparks Senior Center over in Sparks, or on Richards Way rather, used to have a route by it, but no longer does. And I know FlexRide takes up some of that, but I can tell you many of them don't have smartphones. They just, they don't know how to use these things. My dad, who's 90, he doesn't use a smartphone. He's uncomfortable with even his flip phone. So I'm a little concerned with trying to force them into using some of those advancements. Unless we, try to walk them through it and provide the hardware. And then also, it would, in my opinion, be good to potentially look at some, again, flexing to medical offices, and most seniors, as an example, aren't going to have an 8 or 9 o'clock medical appointment. They're going to have a 10 or 11 or something of that nature. So those midday numbers, I think we really need to look at. And I know it's an inconvenience, and people say, "Oh no, you can't change this." And I know everybody gets used to it, but look. I don't know when we're going to see pre-COVID numbers. I don't think anybody does until we get a reliable vaccine, until a whole bunch of things change. So I just think it's a need for us to look at all the routes. Let's look at the ridership. Let's see where we have high ridership. Let's see where we have low ridership. And things come and go all the time. I mean, there's a ton of stores that I have gone out of business over the years that I wish were still alive, but they're not because of, lack of business. And we need to start looking at this as a business, in my opinion, and figure out how FlexRide can take up some of those lower performing routes and move the fixed routes to places where we can get capacity on those buses and get them to a design standard that we really intended. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Any other commissioners? Madam Vice Chair? Do you have any comments, please?
No, thank you.
Chair, I have one more comment, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I just want to, on the flex, I want to just say how much I actually think it's fantastic in Sparks. And thank you for bringing this, and something we've been hoping for. And I actually did a video where I actually went through, did it. They got there within 2 minutes. I did the ride. They were very kind, and we did a whole video on it. But I think our people are enjoying it. And so I would encourage us to continue to look at that as a wise possibility, because I think it even helps people. They don't have to go from their house to try to get to a bus stop for those who struggle. And so when they understand that, it makes it worth, it's just a ride and alternative. Some ways it's a better ride. So, and I do agree one thing with Von Hartung when he mentions possible, we might want to consider doing some form of training where some of our older people could, some of the ones who might not love working on this could see how to. But I do have one request. On our zoning, we found that City Hall of Sparks is not in the zone. I don't know if that's too far to pull that in, but it is kind of weird just because sometimes it seems like it should be in the zone, in my opinion. Again, I don't know how you guys lay that out or what, but for me to do my bus video, I had to drive somewhere else and I couldn't get on it in that zone. So I don't know if there's a way to loop that in or if that's too impossible. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Madam Vice Chair.
Sorry, I apologize. Of course, I always think of something after we've moved on. One of the questions, and I tend to agree with Commissioner Hartung and Dare, that the educational piece is a big one for our seniors. I mean, FlexRide is something that can benefit that population just so incredibly much. And I just would encourage our staff and I understand that some of these boards are on pause because of COVID for the moment, but to begin coordinating with our senior citizen advisory committees, certainly within the city of Reno, well, all jurisdictions, they have great avenues of getting information out and understanding where the people are and the best way to receive that information. So I tend to agree. I think there's an interest in learning. They just need some help in that training, and I think that we could help facilitate that.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Ms. Cummings, I have a couple questions in regards to, as you go through the actual staff report, you have provided to us the evaluation criteria for projects on existing roads and projects on new road construction. I want to start with projects on existing roads. As you go through that evaluation process to give a weight to each project and where it falls in the prioritization of how we look at things, one that jumps out to me that Commissioner Dare brought up earlier today is project readiness. However, project readiness is one of the smallest weighted numbers on our evaluation. And when you talk about being proactive versus reactive, this feels to me as a reactive scoring. We're waiting for things to kind of fall in line, and then if they work, then we move them up. What I'd like to see is if we could change the regional planned use priority, or the TMRPA tier system, which is given 15 points, take 5 points from that and at least give that equal standing of project readiness to that of private agency funding, public input, regional plan, and then project readiness, because I think those types of projects need that ability, because as we can see, we need to be able to move quickly when projects are ready and have that. So they need to be identified higher on the prioritization versus these are all the projects we'd like to do, and we don't know if they're project ready. So it needs to have a better, in my opinion, existing road projects need to have a higher score. And then when you look at new road construction, project readiness doesn't even sit there on some, or doesn't even have evaluation on there. So maybe you could explain to me, is it somewhere folded into another one of the values here and the criteria that I don't know about, or is there a way to put it in and express that in that weighting of that system? So can you address that for me?
Thank you for bringing that up. And we had hoped to have the draft scoring complete today. We are still working on that and are going to have that for you to discuss next meeting. And so we can certainly make those, look at those adjustments that you're just suggesting and show you some different scenarios on how that might affect the scoring. As I mentioned, we now have the 2050 data, so we'll be able to complete the scoring for all of these projects and have that available in the next couple of weeks. And there is a different scoring framework that we'll be using for existing roads, as you mentioned, from new construction, because some of the data isn't available. Project readiness is one of those. We can certainly add that to the new road construction criteria. I think that's a great point.
Okay, Director Thomas.
Thank you, Chairman Lucy. I do appreciate you, Chairman Lucy, bringing this up because it is one of the more important things that this board needs to weigh in on. These choice roads and when we do them and how we do them ultimately are policy decisions. And the five of you are, the representatives to make those big picture decisions. This is an effort to make what is often perceived as subjective a little more objective. But the weighting and the criteria that we use, it's very important for the five of you to be in line with us in terms of how we use that. So as Amy said, we're going to be bringing those back for confirmation with all of you. But in the meantime, if you would please look at this over the next month and make sure that, much like Chairman Lucy said, he had some thoughts on where the values and the weights are. And we would certainly be open and ask for your opinions and thoughts on what factors you think should be higher and which ones are less important as we try to make this subjective decision-making process a little more objective.
In terms of our overall schedule, as I mentioned, we hope to have our scoring completed here in the next couple of weeks. We would like to set up community briefings with interested stakeholders, as well as yourselves over the next month, and also launch a virtual public meeting to get input on the project scoring. Our hope is to get that community input on the projects that have been identified to date, and then bring back to you a draft project listing for your approval. So again, we'll have that discussion with you next meeting and look forward to your input and recalibrating that based on the input that we receive. And we will also be reaching out to set up some briefings in the interim.
Great, thank you, Director Cummings. And I'll close this out with one last comment. This board, obviously, I think 2020 has been a challenging year for us all, but it's allowed us the time to sit back and really have some introspective discussions in regards to how we operate here at RTC and maybe how we go forward as an organization. Commissioner Dare did say this, and I support it 100% in the sense that we need to be more proactive than reactive. And as we continue to fund our own roads and continue to go out and ask, and we've been and your team, Amy, has been very successful about securing a number of grants through either the FTA or FHWA. We have great relationships in Washington, D.C. because of the work that we do and how efficiently we do it. But I think we need to take a really close look at this, because as we look at the RTP, the intent of the RTP is to capture what the community's vision is, not to capture what the community's current status is. So if we're talking about vision, let's talk about really where we need to be and how we can provide that vision. Because as we've heard from Director Swallow and Deputy Director Sandra Rosenberg, and as we keep hearing on the national level, we never know when we're going to get more money in the infrastructure. We never know when, and at the state level, the funding is looking less and less, available. So we're going to have to be self-reliant and make sure that we can prioritize those projects that we can do now, because in my experience, cost of construction has never gone down, it's always gone up. And so if we wait and continue to wait, just because we don't know if we're going to get funding or project readiness, or because it doesn't fit into a steady model, we'll find ourselves in a situation that we may not be able to recover from. So I'd like to really have a good, hearty discussion about this ongoing, because I think it's something that we need to really discuss. So those are my comments.
Chair?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you saying that, because I too think there is opportunity, and I'll give an example where I think there's some great opportunity for more proactive and aggressive addressing of some of these road infrastructure projects. So West Reno. So all of the buildable West Reno projects are now in the door. We know what's coming in. We know with some see what the project scopes look like. We know what number of units potentially are, and to do studies in the sort of Verdi, Mogul, West Reno area to better understand what those traffic impacts, road impacts are going to be. We kind of have a snapshot now, and so rather than waiting until a specific project reaches a certain amount of completion, we can probably say with pretty great certainty they're a go, and we should be building for that. So I tend to agree. Maybe it is an opportunity to shift the way in which we look at projects and how they are prioritized to maybe mitigate some of the issues we've suffered with, that folks say, why do you have to wait until the buildings are in? And I know finances are the reason. But I think there's an opportunity to get some of these framed out. So when we do get the funding, they are, plug and play. So thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I do appreciate those comments. All right, anything further from any of the commissioners? All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion to accept the report. And I think we got plenty of direction. So
Move to approve.
all right, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Delgado.
Second from Delgado. So I have a motion from Commissioner Dare, second from Commissioner Delgado. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. I know everybody's getting excited. This is everybody's favorite time of the meetings. We're into our director's report. So with that, Director Thomas, this is item 6.1.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple of items for this meeting's briefing for me, or report from me. First is we have our meeting in December set for the 18th. And perhaps most important item I want to draw to your attention is we have completed our comprehensive annual financial report, and each of you should be getting that if you haven't yet digitally today. That item will be on there along with the audit findings of the audit report. I think preliminarily, and I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to add anything after I'm done here, but everything looks really good, but we have those formal reports coming to you. So I wanted to give you a heads up that report's coming your way for review at your next meeting. On October 22nd, the Sun Valley General Improvement District honored the RTC with its Community Partner Award. The award recognizes RTC's work on the 2015 Sun Valley Corridor Study, which was led by Deputy Director Cummings and her team, and the community improvements now underway managed by our project manager, Maria Paz Fernandez, working with Brian's team. So we want to thank the teamwork on the success of that. In the spring of 2020, RTC began installation of sidewalks and curb extensions, as well as upgraded storm drains to help control future stormwater from 7th Avenue to Highland Ranch Parkway. In addition, 2 accessible pedestrian signals and safe crossing medians have been completed. This complete street project provides additional safety improvements for all pedestrians within the Sun Valley community, including bike lanes, accessible public transportation stops, frequent and safe crossing opportunities, median islands, and accessible pedestrian signals, and more. Throughout the construction process, the RTC and Q&D Construction have worked closely with and around Sun Valley GID facilities, as well as providing safe traveling conditions in the community during construction. Completion of the project will occur in 2021, and we are honored to receive this recognition from the citizens of Sun Valley. Last month, we submitted a grant application to the Federal Transit Administration for a COVID-19 research demonstration grant. The RTC, if we're successful in achieving this grant, will install dry hydrogen peroxide, DHP is the acronym, generators in the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems of our public transit buses. will collaborate with Desert Research Institute to evaluate the effectiveness of this DHP technology to protect bus drivers and passengers from potential coronavirus and other airborne virus exposures in real-world operational environment. The results of this study, should we get the grant, will be published and shared with industry and vendors to enhance public transportation and environmental safety, both locally as well as nationally. We should be hearing on the decision about the grant sometime beginning of next year, and we're very excited about hopefully having the opportunity to move forward on protecting our passengers and drivers. As part of the 2050 Regional Transportation Plan update, a virtual presentation on the Downtown Reno Circulation Study is now available to the public for review and comment. Information is available on our website at rtcwashoe.com, as well as our social media channels. This study aims to contribute to downtown Reno as a safe and attractive destination, support a revitalized downtown Reno with vibrant public spaces, encourage safe multimodal access to jobs, entertainment, and special events, and to connect downtown Reno to the surrounding neighborhoods and the university. We're accepting comments through Friday, December 11th, 2020, to be able to bring this forward, as I believe Annie has pointed out, as part of the Regional Transportation Plan update. As a member of the Regional Information Center, a coalition of regional partners, including the cities of Reno, Sparks, Washoe County, and Washoe County Health District, among others, the RTC is supporting the Mask On, Move On campaign with public service announcements on our fixed route buses and RTC's social media channels. The campaign reminds the public to wear a mask and socially distance from private and small crowd gatherings. For more information, go to maskonmoveon.com. Last Friday, the RTC partnered with Washoe County Human Services Agency, the Sparks Target Store, and KOLO 8 News Now to support the 2020 Children in Care Stop a Bus drive-by donation drive to benefit foster and adopted children in our community. The county's Human Services Agency currently serves more than 700 kids in care. We surpassed last year's donations by collecting more than $11,000 worth of warm winter clothes, gift cards, and cash contributions. Donations will be distributed through the Family Engagement Center in Sparks, which is the main site for ongoing support for families throughout the winter months. Lastly, in an effort to support their employees during these tumultuous times, NTM Transit, RTC's paratransit and FlexRide service operator, provided each employee with a $15 voucher to use towards a Butterball turkey for Thanksgiving. Next Monday, Keolis, RTC's fixed route provider, will be distributing giant pumpkin pies to each of their staff to enjoy on Thanksgiving. Sorry, I didn't know that was holiday transportation.
There you go.
I would like, on behalf of the board and all the staff at RTC, to thank Keolis and NTM and their frontline employees for ensuring that essential transit services are provided in our community. We are very thankful for their efforts because they are a cornerstone of our public transportation system, and we sincerely appreciate their service and commitment to our community. Lastly, I just want to, on behalf of the staff and board, wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Director Thomas. I appreciate that. All right. Any questions for Director Thomas? Seeing none. All right. We're on to item 6.2. This is our federal report. Director Thomas, it's you again, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Lucy. Each of you has, and it's a matter of public record, the detailed federal report for this month. I would point out, not surprisingly, that most of the conversation that has been going on at the federal level is to understand the transition of administrations and how that will impact both funding and priorities. It seems that the initial indications is that the structure of not only the transition team, but also ultimately the transportation oversight is going to be very much focused on assisting transit. So I think transit will probably be in a better position from what we can tell as far as transit funding moving forward, but yet that's still to be seen. We're still in a situation where The funding for the federal government terminates at the end of the year, and that will influence what happens not only from the standpoint of federal employees we work with, particularly with FTA and FHWA and their ability to be responsive to our projects, but also the ongoing funding as it relates to programs and activities that we look towards to meet some of our needs. So I would just share with the board and you, Chairman Lucy, that's kind of a brief of the update. I'm glad to answer any questions, but I would say probably to characterize it, there's a lot more conjecture about where we're going than there is true answers as far as this transition, but we stay on top of it, and anytime we hear news that is definitive or potentially impactful for us, we will share it.
Any questions in regards to the federal update for Mr. Thomas? No, seeing none. My only comment in regards to the federal process and what's going to happen in the transition is our major concern, obviously, has always been who will be, through the transition, who will be named as Secretary of the Department of Transportation. Also, who will be named as Secretary of the Department of Interior. Both have played a major role in our road development and how we move through that process. I think that a majority of the individuals that we currently work with in both FHWA and FTA will maybe hopefully retain their positions into the new administration. We keep our fingers crossed, as Director Thomas pointed out, and most of this is conjecture and not real science yet. But we will know more as the new administration coming in, if they make what those changes will look like. We hope to, when they make those changes, that Director Thomas and members of this board possibly travel back to meet with our lobbyists in the vet and to meet with some of those administration members. So those discussions we can have as we go forward in the next coming months, depending on how we see, even if DC kind of opens back up right now, it's kind of an imposed position. So we will just kind of keep an eye on that and watch to see what happens at that federal level. And so those are my comments in regards to that. And then we will look at some other things going forward. Anything else on the federal report? Seeing none, all right, we will move on. Close. I said item 6.2, and we will move on to item 6.3. This is our monthly NDOT report. We have the wonderful director, Kristen Swallow. Kristen Swallow with us. Ms. Swallow, how are you this morning? And the floor is yours.
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be back. I missed you last month, but it's good to be back on the board meeting today. And I should say on, right? Because we're still not in person. And I don't know when that'll happen, but I'm glad we're still able to do our updates and keep everybody connected and apprised in this virtual environment. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Oh, I did that in the wrong order. Hold on. Share and present. All right, you can see the presentation?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
All right, great. So I wanted to do, as I do every month, I start with safety, because safety truly is our top priority. And you know, it's a challenge because it's NDOT's top priority, but the outcomes of our conversations are really driven by each and every one of us as drivers, as pedestrians, as cyclists, motorcycle riders and users of our system. And you can see, unfortunately, our fatalities continue to be above those of last year. They are up 8% compared to last year. And as you know, on the RTC board, our volumes are down. They were down significantly in March. April, they started to recover, but they have not recovered. And in fact, while we thought we were leveling out for a little bit with the COVID numbers increasing as they have been, we're starting to see a downward trend again in traffic volumes. And so that makes the 8% increase in fatalities even more concerning. Unrestrained fatalities are up 31% from the same time last year. And And there's no reason for that. We all, when we get in our car, we should all put on our seatbelt every time. So just, if you ever are in the car with somebody who's not putting on their seatbelt, ask them why, and don't move your car until they put it on, because there's a 50% increase, or a 2 to 1 if you put your seatbelt on survival rate. So put your seatbelt on. And Washoe County has seen a 58% increase in occupant fatalities. We've also seen across the state pedestrian fatalities increasing 31%, although in Washoe County they've remained flat. Although if we all recall, last year they were higher than in past years. So while they've stayed flat, they're still higher than they should be. And every fatality is one too many. And then one troubling increase that we've seen, and actually Vice Chair Jardin mentioned it last month, is motorcyclist fatalities, which are up 50% year over year in Washoe County, from 8 last year to 12 this year. And the Office of Public Safety says the top 3 causes for motorcyclist fatalities, the top 2 are very similar to that for fatalities overall: speeding and impairment. And then the third is failure to yield the right of way, when a driver fails to see the motorcyclist, which is sometimes hard to do. If we're not looking and very aware, it is easy to miss a motorcyclist, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't do everything we can to see everyone who's around us. Because if you're missing a motorcyclist, who else might you be missing? A cyclist, a pedestrian. So we have to remember, as I've said, every month, every fatality is one too many. And every fatality represents a life lost that, was a member, with somebody's son or daughter, mother or father, aunt, uncle, somebody's kid for sure. And so I want to tell a story so that we're not just talking numbers, we're talking people. And on the evening of November 1st, a motorcycle crashed into a car on I-80 at exit 7 Mogul. The rider sustained serious injuries and was taken to the hospital. Luckily, no one else was injured. It's not immediately clear what the cause of the crash was, but we definitely know that visibility can be an issue in the darker hours, not just for motorcyclists, but for everyone that's outside of a vehicle, which makes them more dangerous. So it's our reminder today to just, if it's dark and you can't see, slow down. If it's twilight hours and things are, caught between the shadows and the dark, slow down. Be aware of those that are on the roads outside of our vehicles. And just remember, it's every single one of our responsibilities. And as drivers, we carry the lion's share of that responsibility, because vehicles are the heaviest thing on the road. So fortunately, the numbers are up. We're going into the holiday season. Everybody just remember to, stay sober, slow down, buckle up, and be safe on the roads. All right, my next slide, I wanted to provide an update. I'm not sure we've been doing this on a monthly basis, and if we haven't, I apologize. I know you asked for them on a monthly basis, so we're gonna try and be better about that if we haven't been. Sometimes there's not a lot of change from month to month, and so that has made it, I think, a little more difficult to do monthly. So we're going to try and make sure to keep you updated. This last week, actually, was this week, we provided an update on the Spaghetti Bowl, the SBX construction at the Washoe County Commission meeting. We wanted to also provide the same update for the RTC Commission. You've been seeing the work. Work is certainly underway as part of the SBX project. And this week we entered phase 1C, widening on 580 between Mill Street and Plum Lane. And drivers will start to see overnight interstate ramp closures and related lane shifts on north and southbound 580. A major element of the SBX construction will begin the evening of November 29th and end on December 7th. It will begin with ramp closures as portions of a bridge are removed and barrier rail are installed as part of future bridge widening. The marathon construction will close 2 Spaghetti Bowl ramps from I-80 with detours available to access I-580 and US 395. Outer shoulders of the I-80 eastbound to northbound 395 bridge will be saw cut to remove to allow for future bridge widening and concrete barrier rails and supports to be placed to secure the bridge for reopening to traffic. Westbound I-80 ramp to southbound I-580 will be closed from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. nightly at 9 p.m. November 29th, and ending at 6 a.m. December 7th. So again, westbound I-80 to southbound I-580 will be closed in the overnight hours beginning November 29th and ending on December 7th. There will be a detour northbound US 395 to Audi to southbound 395. And then this is actually prep work for the demo itself. Eastbound I-80 to northbound 395 will be closed 24 hours a day, beginning at 10 p.m. on December 4th and ending at 5 a.m. on December 7th. So we're aiming for weekend work on this. 10 p.m. December 4th, 5 a.m. December 7th will be the closure of eastbound 80 to northbound 395. And both of these are shown on the slide that you can see. And the detour will be Wells Avenue to 395, or southbound I-580 to 2nd to northbound 580. I should note that if you're looking at the website right now, there were some glitches on the slide, so we're going to give the RTC a new slide so that, and the presentation will be updated. For the duration of the weekend, the eastbound I-80 ramp to northbound will be closed. I said 24 hours, nightly closures. And December construction will also include utility work near the RSIC, as well as neighborhood walls and I-580 paving. So there will be additional work going on in December. Just a couple of key achievements that I thought would be of interest. The bridge plans, which we all know were one of our key points, key critical path items. The bridge plans have been approved by the railroad, and that allows us to start negotiating the construction and maintenance agreement process with them. So we're excited with that update. And the design work is 80% complete. It's a design build, so construction starts before the design is complete, but design is 80% complete, and we are still on schedule for completion in November of 2022. One other SBX update, we will be doing a virtual public meeting from December 3rd to 17th. It'll be at n.spaghettibowl.com. And this is really just a project update. We're not seeking feedback or comments, but we are providing a project update. Members of the community will be able to virtually drive the corridor. And of course, if there's any questions that come up during this process, so if somebody does log in and provide us some comment or feedback or questions, we will be responding to the questions that we receive. 395 North Valley's Parr Bridge, Dandini. We've gotten some feedback. I think we even got some feedback from members of this commission a couple of months back. And we've heard from the community, there's a concern on the northbound off-ramp with visibility for left turns. Our project manager, Jay Poland, was able to, again, update the Washoe County Commission earlier this week, so we wanted to provide you the same update. So when making a left turn from the ramp so you'd be heading west onto Parr, the sight distance is limited. And the reason for this is the geometric layout with the new bridge is slightly different than it was before. The ramp is very close to the new structure, and the new structure included a profile change along the bridge where the east side of the bridge was raised 4 to 5 feet. The new bridge standards also, so when we constructed this bridge, we had to comply with new bridge standards, require higher barrier rail, and you can see the barrier rail right in this area. So higher barrier rail, again, limits some of the visibility. And the bridge construction also includes new sidewalks, so the stop bar over here is further back to allow for the crossing. And we've also found that drivers are not driving the posted speed limit. And so that's also a concern, because if you're looking for gaps and they're driving faster than they should be, the gaps are shorter. So what are we doing about this? We are moving forward with some field changes and to improve the site visibility. The changes will be continuing until the next US 395 construction phase in 2023. So the final version of this will be completed when we're doing that final project. But in the meantime, we are going to maintain the closure. You can see the sidewalk here is closed. We're going to maintain the closure of the sidewalk on the south side of the bridge. This is possible because there is no existing sidewalk to connect from the Dandini side. So there's no other sidewalk to connect. So we're going to maintain this closure. While we do also we will keep the sidewalk on the north side open because there is connectivity on both sides of the bridge on the north side. This will allow us to move the stop bar from this location further out, increasing visibility. And then we'll also have some minor adjustments to the bridge striping. For the next 395 construction phase, however, the northbound ramp will be realigned further east. Moving the ramp further to the east will provide additional distance from the bridge rail and therefore heighten visibility. At that time, the sidewalk on the south side will be open. We're working quickly to make these early changes so that we can improve the site visibility and the safety at this intersection. And do just want to thank everybody for providing us their feedback. I should note in the interim, we're providing electronic feedback signs to remind motorists to drive the advisory speed on their bridge until we can do these other upgrades. But again, we are trying to be a very responsive agency, and when we hear comments like this out of new construction, it's important for us to hear them so that we can evaluate and improve them. We definitely don't want to create something that creates a safety concern. All right, and then Councilman Dare, you mentioned that, and you asked this last month, and so I'm sorry we didn't get it to you sooner, but we're trying to provide the feedback to the whole board as a whole. So I wanted to provide the feedback on our 2021 to 2024 work program and how we're investing across the state. So our work program lists transportation projects that NDOT intends to work on during this fiscal year or the future fiscal years. And they're sorted by county, with each of the 17 counties represented with its own, with another section, with its own section, as well as a section for the Tahoe MPO. The 4-year work program of NDOT-led prioritized projects. And I'm saying that specifically, NDOT-led prioritized projects includes $2.3 billion of investment, with Clark accounting for 63% of that, and Washoe accounting for 17%, and then other is 20%. So what's not included, because I said NDOT-led, what's not included is a rural transit, NEPA only, where we're just starting the NEPA, some program funding buckets like road safety audits, rec trails, statewide bridge inspections and inventories. We're working on trying to get the breakout of those so that we can include them, and bond repayments. If all of those are included in the distribution, though, the numbers actually adjust so that Clark is 60%, Washoe is 13%, the other counties are 17%, and then statewide is 10%. So that's the high level. We have a couple of different pie charts because I just gave you those numbers, and I wanted to also show you where we've been in the last 10 years. And again, I'll have pie charts for where we're going for the next 4. Now you can see that Clark has been at 56% over the last 10 years. If you include the statewide on the right, if you divvy out the statewide and pull it out as its own separate item, Clark has actually only been at 54% over the last 10 years. Washoe has been at 16%, and the other counties have been at 27 to 28%. And then if you look at, again, moving forward, you're looking at moving forward, Washoe would be, if you include the statewide number, that's on the left at 10%. Washoe's at 13 with Clark at 60. But if you just exclude the statewide, Washoe is at 15% and Clark is at 67. So we are maintaining funding priorities in the 2 urban counties, Clark and Washoe, while also trying to maintain our preservation across the state. The board established new preservation goals in, I think it was April that they did that this year, where we looked at where the preservation of the system was overall. The goal previously was 95% fair or better condition across the entire state. They reset that because we weren't able to invest at that level, or we're choosing not to invest at that level. They reset that so that we're going to maintain the current state of the system across the state. But we also have to invest additional funds in order to even maintain the current condition. So some of the statewide funding will have to, or other counties will have to go up to maintain that. But we are, again, trying to make sure that we're continuing to invest in Washoe and Clark as appropriate and as funding allows. There was some discussion earlier about the shortfall that we are facing. It's roughly $530 $530 million annual shortfall. If we had that additional revenue, we of course would be investing it. There are plenty of needs, as we've talked about earlier in this call. But these are the numbers and reflect the numbers for our STIP programming for the next 4 years. Some of the things that aren't included on here, are betterments. So some of our smaller projects that are led by our district forces are only included in the first 2 years, and so the percentages could slightly change as we add those in the coming years. And then similarly, some of our preservation work, the 3R work, is mostly only in years 1 and 2. And so again, as we fill in those out years, the numbers could change slightly. And generally, we have the out year dollars tend to be a little bit lower because we're not quite sure what's going into those. As we get closer, we fill those in. All right, another meeting follow-up. So last month, there were some questions regarding speeds. Commissioner Hartung asked some questions regarding speeds on Pyramid Highway. And I do have an update that we have completed an intersection control evaluation on Pyramid Highway at Egyptian. It was completed in October. And we looked at a signal, a roundabout, and a J-turn as the 3 options. Each has their own advantages and disadvantages or drawbacks, but the signal ranked high in the evaluation process as it's already been cleared through the environmental process. It could be installed relatively quickly compared to other options, and is similar to other traffic control along the corridor. Ultimately, we want to make sure that whatever we do install, and we will be working on doing a full corridor analysis to make sure there is consistency across the corridor. But we are moving forward right now with a scoping process, looking at the signal option to get a better idea of what the risks and the costs of that will be. Project would likely be delivered not this fiscal year, but possibly next fiscal year. We'll have more information on that as we're able to continue and complete the scoping and have a better understanding of the risks and costs associated with that project. Calle de la Plata, we are working with the RTC and developing options to help address the speeding concerns on Pyramid at Calle de la Plata. We've also had many discussions over the past months regarding the coming changes to the advanced signal warning systems across the state. And we have appreciated the opportunity to have some direct conversations with some of the commissioners and their transportation leads at the cities and the county. We are working on doing some additional presentations or have already given them to some of the local agencies and are getting additional feedback from members of the RTC as well as other stakeholders. As we do this, we're reviewing our implementation plan to make sure that we're providing the most effective transition from the current configuration to the ultimate configurations. And as we've worked with everybody, once we finish this outreach component, we will adjust our plan for implementation and then begin the advertisement for the initial phases of that work. We will continue to keep you at the board level apprised, as well as we're happy to answer any questions on an individual level. Please, you know where to find me, and I think you now all pretty much know where to find a lot of my team members as well. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. We want to work with you. We do need to work on the overall implementation because these are critical information pieces. They're part of the information system that drivers use as we're driving. And so we want to make sure they're consistent across the state and in line with federal updates that have occurred since we initially rolled these out. So we're going to continue to work with you, though, to find the best way to implement them in a way that keeps our community members informed and doesn't create any shocks to the system or minimizes the shocks. And then one last thing that I wanted to announce is I am very excited. We have been short an assistant director of engineering since Cole was promoted to deputy last summer. And we have now promoted Jeff LaRude into this position. He is a UNR grad, so you all of the Northern Nevadans should be super excited. We got a UNR grad in this role. He's a civil engineer, registered PE, and a certified public manager. He started his career with us in 1995, and he's worked in roadway design, traffic operations divisions, and project management. where he's managed projects in both the North and the South for the last 10 years. His tenure, I said, has been since 95, so 25 years, with 20 of those years in Northern Nevada and the last 5 in Southern. So he has a really strong perspective of our statewide needs, has managed projects both North and South, has lived in both North and South, so really has a good perspective on that. And we're very happy to welcome him into this role, and he's another person that you can reach out to. He's getting his legs in this new role, but he's already showing to be a really great fit. So we're excited to welcome him. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn back to you so that I can answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Swallow. I do appreciate it always. So we will open it up for discussion for the commissioners.
Hi, thank you so much, Christina Swallow. We appreciate the information. I do want to thank you that I got to meet with your staff and that they took seriously with the things we were questioning and things and took a step back. I just need to say out loud and on the record, I don't see fully why this is a need of what they're talking about. And it's not just me, I can tell you from the city of Sparks. And one of the things I'd like to you guys to consider is I appreciate there's things across the state you want to look at, but we even know when we lead things, it doesn't always work that way. There are things in certain regions you got to look at what is happening and what's been created and what is there now. If there was a problem with crashes and things that of their concern, I would be the first to talk about the need to see change, but that's not happening. And so it would seem that you might be creating the very problems or running after a problem that's not there. So we just want a lot more information. And I do appreciate them willing to take a step back and look at this. But I can just tell you, I sat through quite a few different presentations on this. I've seen it, but it's not just me. It's actually quite a few of us that do not understand it. And I would appreciate really that you'd look at what we see in need, because our first job is safety, just like yours. I mean, I know that's a goal. I appreciate your beginning of what you talked about. But for us, that is a big concern of the changes that are being talked about. The other question is, so can we go to the county thing of where we spend money, if you don't mind? Can you pull that up?
Hold on. I got to share my screen again. Sorry. Share screen.
And I'm 100% aware that you are not necessarily the decision maker of how this happened. So but you get to be our messenger to some conversation. When I look at this, it seems like Washoe County is low. Now, I'd like to know, so if we could dive deeper at some point, how do they get these percentages? Where do they decide this? Is it just based upon what they have presumed need? Because our needs are very real. And so I would like them to look at like they're very real. And again, I think your staff is very sincere in this, but sometimes there's people making decisions that are beyond staff. And I'd like that message to go that I want to know how we're coming up with these decisions and what percentages are being spent. And I know it goes probably to the governor's office or wherever, but I don't mind that being said with my name on it saying, what are we doing? And we have needs here that affect very real people. And so to me, this just does not seem like the numbers should be at this level. And again, maybe there's a number, maybe I'm wrong, maybe the population base makes sense, but I don't necessarily think that's true. And so could we send that message or get some information on how they're making this? That would be an interest to me. Thank you.
Okay.
And I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, really, truly.
Thank you, Commissioner Garrett. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you very much. And I appreciated those comments too. And I would look forward to that information as well, because I don't know if it's based on population, with 2 million people in the Las Vegas Valley and 500,000 in Washoe County. I'm just not sure how the formula of the money spent gets divided. And I know it's based upon projects and it shifts and moves. And I know we are the benefactors of a significant 395 I-80 project. But I also know that was one major project in the north while there was 7 going on in the south. So I too would like to understand the equity issue. I didn't want this meeting to pass without giving a huge shout out to NDOT and to Cole and to Christina for helping us with the Governor's Bowl property. Huge deal. In record time, did the transfer of the property, and all 3 jurisdictions voted in favor of the Nevada Cares campus. So sincerest thanks.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I do appreciate that. Commissioner Hartung.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the information, Ms. Swallow, and very, very great detailed information. Can you send us that PowerPoint? Can Denise or someone email that PowerPoint to us?
Yeah, so the RTC has it. We just have to update it, and I think we already did this morning with the changes on the SBX slide. Yes, so
okay.
You have it.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, great. That's wonderful. Thank you. So thank you for looking at the Pyramid Highway. I genuinely appreciate that. My hope is that you'll see the need to move up and maybe, Mr. Thomas, we can somehow work with the RTC. I know there's a huge amount of RIF funds going into the areas that surround the Egyptian intersection, and it's primarily Egyptian and Sunset Springs, of course. But a lot is coming out of that intersection. I mean, it's really very dangerous. You have to cross 5 lanes, and so the sooner we can look at that, the better. I'm like Mr. Dare on the advanced signal warning system. I don't see it as broken, and I see and I've watched this in our all of our planning agencies over the years, where something, some national standard says, oh, we need to change this, and so we sort of follow suit. It's like a 2-button coat versus a double-breasted. What's in fashion? And double-breasteds are not in, and so everybody wants to wear a 2-button. I don't see it as broken, to be honest with you. I mean, Pyramid Highway works extremely well right now, and I don't see the advanced signal warning system as causing more issues than it's solving. What I would like to also add, though, and I've had this conversation with a couple of folks, is there is really a need. And I was hopeful when we did the acceleration lane coming from the Hall Road on Pyramid Highway in the north, and we terminated that acceleration lane at West Calle de la Plata, as opposed to running it all the way through. And there is an acceleration lane that comes off of West Calle de la Plata and heads south. Those trucks are fully laden, and they have to move over into that single lane. If we were to just look at that, running straight south to Egyptian, that would be a marvelous way to make that section much safer, and it's really not terribly far. And then the final thought on that is, I know Martin Marietta offered all the materials to do the acceleration lane originally, which NDOT did not take them up on. So I think we could probably get Martin Marietta into that conversation, because it's their laden trucks that are really there's nothing they can do. I mean, there's just nothing they can do. And I'd like to underscore, I have no desire to close that aggregate pit down. It offers some of the finest aggregate, if not the finest aggregate road base in the entire state. And in fact, I was told at one point that pit is the standard by which all others are measured. So I don't want to do that. I just think that there's a real need there. And I appreciate you. I really do. Thank you so much. And like Ms. Jordan mentioned, thank you to you, to Cole. Cole really led this effort on the Governor's Bowl. He was really a power lifter. I know you were, and I appreciate you guys carrying that to the governor and to his staff and getting it done for us. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Delgado.
No questions on my end. Thank you, Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Christina, obviously every meeting it seems like we come asking like you're Santa Claus and we're just hungry children waiting for Christmas to come. I don't want to do that with you today. I think you've heard from a number of our commissioners, our concerns, and they're pretty much consistent with what we always do. What I would like to talk to you is maybe get some questions, have you answer some questions for me. There may not be questions you can answer, but I want to ask them anyways. So currently, NDOT is supported by a board of directors. Four of those directors, board of directors are members of the general public that are appointed by the governor, and then 3 other members are the governor himself, the lieutenant governor, and then the controller. Currently, the rural member of District 3 is not seated, is my understanding. Do you know when that board seat will be filled?
Commissioner Lucy, I do not know when that position will be filled. It is a governor appointment. I know that he's looking for candidates. So if you have anyone who you think would be a good candidate, I'm happy to help pass that information on. And I know that you can certainly reach out to him directly if that's something you'd like to do.
Okay, just a question. I didn't know if there was something you guys were working on. And then as it pertains to the fuel tax discussion, hopefully as we move into legislative session, I act as the legislative director, not a legislative director, but the chair of the legislative committee for NACO, but I also do that for Washoe County as well. And with BDR 48 in regards to the gas tech, hopefully we can find ourselves in alignment with that discussion at the legislature, because it will impact your funding as well as impact our funding, or not. And so as we find out what more of those details look like and the actual information that comes down, hopefully we can have some cohesive discussions about that. I look forward to talking to you more about that. And then a couple of board members did bring up some discussions about TAP funding and how we do that. If I could get a presentation from you in the future in regards to CMAQ funds, I think, you did do a lot of the project expenditures, but CMAQ funds are a big portion of some funding that we do as it pertains to projects and some mitigation issues throughout the state. Hopefully you can come back and show us how those CMAQ funds are collected and how those are broken down. Funding recommendations are definitely those that go from staff to the board, and then the board makes the decision. So it's definitely beneficial for that District 3 seat to be filled. Our representative here in District 2 would be, Mr. Stephen Squaga. So I know he serves on that board with you. But if we could have those discussions going forward, I think it's important, because as we talk about, transportation, I've always said this at the national level, state and local, transportation is always a driver for development. And if we can build roads and successfully make them safe, it makes a massive difference in regards to where our development goes and how we get people safely to and from jobs and homes and grocery stores. And as I said earlier, I think this COVID-19 issue has allowed us to go back and reevaluate how we do a lot of things. But it also has changed the way we collect revenue. So if we can look at that, I already spent Tuesday beating up on the staff in regards to Mount Lewis Highway, so I won't do it today. But other than that, I really appreciate you. So hopefully we can have some of those future discussions. Thank you, Director Swallow. Anything further from any of the commissioners before we move on? No, seeing none. All right, thank you, Commissioner Swallow. I do appreciate that. We're on to our final public comment of the day. Madam Clerk, have we received any further public comment during the meeting today? No. All right, seeing no further public comment has been added. If it was received, we will put it on to the minutes. We're on item 8. This is member items. Any further items for discussion for future agendas? Once, twice. Commissioner Hartung, you did want to talk about the RIP program, so we will put that on a future agenda. Is that okay with you? Probably after the first of the year.
Yeah, after the first of the year, Mr. Chairman, would be great, and just a presentation as to how. What I'd like to know is how many roof credits exist, who holds them, what's out there in the market, how they're able to trade those. I think this is an extremely important conversation, and it's actually not to try to disparage the use of RIF credits or the holders of those credits. It's really to try to buoy the value of them and make sure that regardless of what the economy does, they have a value, and that value is maintained by RTC. I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're involved in the trading of them. So that's, and maybe there is some way that RTC is involved already, but I think that it would be good for all the members to understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple things I have. I'd like the staff to bring back a discussion we saw earlier today in regards to, from Director Cummings, the discussion on the new bus yard and changes we'll have to make at Villanova. I'd like to try to identify, get some staff to go back and identify potential parcels for where a new bus yard may be, what that would look like, and maybe start having those discussions now and see what the price of property would be, if it is a significant piece that we'll have to do to move that facility. But we do, as you pointed out, have a few years to do that, but better to start that process now, be get ahead of that. Also, I would like to bring back at probably maybe the December meeting or the January meeting a legislative policy discussion. By that time, we'll have a better understanding. Hopefully, Mr. Hillary can come back and have a better understanding of what session is going to look like going into next year. The gavel does drop on February 1st, so we want to know what that looks like for the next 120 days of session, which is always a super fun time. But when we do that, just so that this board has a clear direction to our executive director and Mr. Hillary about what we'd like to see in the legislature, and not only at the state, but potentially at the federal level as well. So I'd like to have that discussion with the board and move forward. Anything else? Anything that I missed or anything else to add? No? I would like to say, Commissioner Dare, is my understanding that this may be your last meeting, sir. Is that correct?
It could be. We are looking at some moving around of a few things. It's potential that I would stay as the alternate, though, so I would try to stay involved. But either way, I promise I will help feed the next person, if that's the case, the information I'm hoping to get. So, but thank you. It's been an honor to be here and trying to fill in Ron's shoes. And so it's an honor to work with everybody, for sure.
Well, Commissioner Dare, from my standpoint, you have been a tremendous addition to this, and you have, Ron's shoes are very big shoes to fill for the city of Sparks as he's served for so many years, but you have been a greatly, you've been a wonderful addition and very insightful in a lot of the comments. So whether or not you stay or not, you will always be a cherished member of this board and this team. I think you've done a phenomenal job, and we hope that there aren't changes, but if there are, that we continue to work with you. So thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Truly, truly an honor. Work with everybody for sure. Thank you.
All right. Seeing nothing further, we want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving that are joining us today. Please be safe. Remember, put your mask on, keep your mask on so we can move forward with business and social distancing. And, take care of your families. So thank you very much. We are adjourned, everybody.